Good Tuesday afternoon to you. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty of Browns to talk about. A little later in the show, we'll be joined by Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com to talk Browns. And we begin by talking Browns as well. A roster move made this afternoon. Browns placed Nick Harris on injured reserve list. That means he has to miss at least the next 3 games. And they signed an offensive lineman off of the practice squad. This is according to Jonathan Jones, senior NFL writer for CBSSports.com. Hjalte Froholdt is the guy that they are signing off the Texans practice squad. 25 years old, former New England Patriot 4th-round draft pick from Arkansas. Big guy, 6'5", 306 pounds, a native of Denmark. Missed all of 2019 with a shoulder injury. Has played 8 regular season games. Those were with the New England Patriots. Again, the Browns signing Hjalte Froholdt off the practice squad of the Houston Texans. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Mary Kay, when they first made the move signing a guy off the practice squad, hadn't heard who it was. I was afraid it was going to be Jedrick Wills going on the IR. That is not the case. They're still awaiting MRI results from Jedrick Wills that they will get and announce what they're doing with Jedrick tomorrow.
Well, first of all, congratulations on being able to pronounce Froholdt's name. So good for you on that one. But yeah, Jedrick Wills, it's been so unfortunate. This was a season in which Jedrick Wills was supposed to take a nice big leap up, maybe even into a Pro Bowl type of season. And he really has been hurt by that ankle injury that he first sustained in the Kansas City game. His whole first quarter of the season has been, pretty much wiped out by this ankle injury. 2 games ago, it got rolled up on by Nick Chubb. And then in this past game against the Vikings, he got tangled up with Harrison Bryant. So not good for Jed Wills. Just seeing him get carted off each of the last 2 weeks and then undergoing an MRI yesterday, that says to me that there's a chance he might have to take a little bit of time off. Now, I'm not sure about that yet. But, it just seems like it could possibly be trending in that direction. And that's just unfortunate for him and for the Browns.
Yeah, and you certainly try to get him back to full strength because it's tough enough playing left tackle in the NFL on 2 legs. When you're kind of hobbling 1 on 1.5, it's even that much tougher. So get him healthy, and I'm sure that's Kevin Stefanski's mindset. They appreciate him trying to gut it out and get through it. But so far, last 2 games, he's had to, as you mentioned, go off before, even the third quarter. He did not get through most of the last 2 games.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part about each of the last 2 games is the fact that their excellent backup swing tackle, Chris Hubbard, has also been out these 2 games with a triceps injury. So it would not have been so bad to lose Jed for those games, except for the fact that they did not have Chris Hubbard out there able to replace him. So, that's been really, really difficult. And, they've had to be down to their 3rd string tackle in Blake Hance, and that didn't go very well. And then they put their 4th string guy in there, James Hudson, the rookie who's still learning the pro game. He went in there against a difficult defense, and he committed a very costly false start penalty on 4th and 1 that took him out of an opportunity to go for it. Had to punt in a crucial time in the game. And it's been tough for them to be without Jed.
Yeah, without question. All right, let's shift our focus. Baker Mayfield wasn't a great game against the Vikings. What were your takeaways from the way Baker's played the last couple of weeks?
Well, let me just talk about right now the Vikings game. It really was the worst game that I've seen Baker play just in terms of lack of accuracy. He could never get himself together in that game. It was just the most bizarre thing. He was off from beginning to end. There have been other games where he sailed passes here and there, but then he nailed some other really big plays. This time, he just couldn't hit the big plays. Said he couldn't hit the ocean from the beach, really. I mean, he struggled with a couple of guys in particular, 12 targets to Odell Beckham Jr. and Austin Hooper, and he hit those guys 3 times. That would have been 2 of 7 for only 27 yards to Odell, 1 of 5 for 11 yards to Austin Hooper. These are two guys that, these are two big money guys, by the way. That's about $26 million worth of currency right there in those two guys. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out quite yet the way everybody hoped and expected it would. Now, is this a sign that Baker is still struggling a little bit with Odell? Or is this perhaps just, can this be just chalked up to a bad game by Baker Mayfield? And sometimes that happens. Sometimes a guy just has a bad game.
Yeah, the other question would be, and Kevin Stefanski played it down, is that non-throwing shoulder still bothering him? And I got to believe that's at least part of it. That would kind of prohibit him potentially from following through the way he likes to and kind of torquing the hips the way he normally does. And that could be a reason. And again, I'm playing amateur doctor and amateur quarterback coach, but that could explain for some of the struggles.
You know what? I'm going to say no on that, David. I'm going to say that the shoulder is not an issue. And one of the reasons why I say that, well, there are several reasons why I say that, but the number one reason why I say that is because Baker was actually overthrowing most of his passes. Now, if he were having a hard time getting the ball to the mark and of where he wanted it to go, then I would say, okay, he's in pain and he just can't throw as far as he usually does. Instead, he's throwing it over guys' heads, and that one to Kareem Hunt in the end zone was a rocket. I mean, that had way too much heat on it. So I'm just going to say no on the shoulder thing. I don't think that's it. So that brings us back to that it's got to probably be either just a really, really bad game by Baker, or he has some chemistry issues with some of his guys.
Fair enough. Fair to say, though, there are going to be games where Baker Mayfield has to go out and win the game. He hadn't had to really, at least the last 3 games. They need him to play well.
They absolutely need him to play well. Most of the time, when your quarterback has a clunker of a game like that, a 59.5 rating, no touchdowns, no interceptions, a lot of times when the quarterback lays an egg like that, you don't win the football game. That goes to show you how good the defense was in that game and how good the running game is. They're so lucky that they have so many other good parts of this football team. And also, I think that the Minnesota Vikings did not do themselves any favors either. I think Kirk Cousins, with a lot of help from the Browns defense, kind of went bad on his own. There were some drop passes on the part of the Vikings. Dalvin Cook had to leave the game with his ankle injury again. He was not himself whatsoever. Who knows what happens in that game if Dalvin Cook was the Dalvin Cook that we all know, that rushed for 1,500 some yards last season. That's not the Dalvin Cook that we saw in that game on Sunday. He hobbled off the field. I didn't even think he was going to go back in the game. So I think that was a factor. I think the Browns were kind of lucky in some ways to get out of Minnesota the way that they did. And that was, of course, because of the excellent defense.
All right, one more thing about Baker Mayfield. Is he taking too many sacks? I mean, it's 8 in the last 2 games, a total of 12 for the first 3 with what is a really good offensive line.
Yes, absolutely. He's taking too many sacks. Okay, so you're right. He has 12 right now. That is number 5 in the NFL. That's also an average of about 3 per game. And at that current pace, he would take 51 sacks this season, which is basically double of what happened last year. Now, when you're looking at that number, there are some reasons for it. Jed Wills. I mean, Jed Wills is out, and they're taking a ton of pressure at that left tackle side. So that has a ton to do with it. And, once Jed is better or Chris is back, I think they'll tighten that up. But the other thing is that, and I've said this so many times, they just were not tested on the offensive line last year as much as they will be this year. They just weren't. They didn't face the Joey Bosa's. Chase Young left that game really early for the Washington football team. J.J. Watt played in a weather game where rushing wasn't a factor. T.J. Watt sat out the season finale. They did not have a lot of games where they were getting a ton of explosive edge rushers coming at them. And that's going to be different this year. We've already seen some of it. There will be more.
The other thing is the running game has been outstanding, dominant, and that's a part of that offensive line as well. Matter of fact, time of possession almost 10 minutes per game in the Browns' favor, 34-21 to 25-39. Is that sustainable? Can they do that for an entire season?
Well, if they continue to play this kind of defense and they continue to be able to run the ball that way, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to with two number one backs on their football team and that offensive line run blocking the way that it does, they should be able to do that. And that is a lot of the game plan. That is part of why they are 3-1 right now. It's a big part of why they are 3-1 right now, because they've kind of had to carry the passing game. I mean, right now, Baker Mayfield has 2 touchdown passes, which we just did a podcast and talked about, some of the most surprising things, some of the most disappointing things of the season. And my most surprising thing was that Baker Mayfield has only 2 touchdown passes. I mean, repeat that. 4 games, 2 touchdown passes. By now, I would have thought he had at least 8, for roughly about 2 a game, especially because they've played some defenses that aren't that great. So yeah, I think that they're very lucky, but in terms of the time of possession being sustainable, I think some of it will have to do with what the opponent is able to do. They're going to run into some good teams coming up here with some good quarterbacks and some good offenses in general. And those teams are not going to give up the field easily either.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll talk some Browns defense. They've been very good, especially the last 2 weeks. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine. Too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Mary Kay, fair to say, Browns didn't play a great game offensively. It was a good game defensively. Played a very different game than they were expecting and found a way to win. What does that say about a team when they're able to do that?
Well, I just think that this is a really strong football team all across the board. And everybody was worried about that defense and were they going to, be any good? And was Joe Woods on the hot seat? It was just going to take a little bit of time for the defense to come together. And I still don't think they've even scratched the surface, not even close. I think it's an excellent, excellent defense. And the best is yet to come. They haven't even really started taking the ball away at the level that they're going to very soon. And so I think good things are here to come for this defense. And I think the passing game will come around very soon. I think it will get a lot better as soon as Jarvis Landry gets back. I think that Baker's going to get untracked. I think that this game for Baker Mayfield is going to be one that he's going to want to put in the rearview mirror and get it turned around. I think it can be the catalyst for future success for him.
So the other thing is the last 2 weeks, Browns defense, it's been dominant. There's no other way to put it. Kevin Stefanski yesterday talked about what's come together the last couple of weeks.
I think there's probably a bunch of answers to that, Tom. I would just tell you, in terms of gelling, one of the main things I would say is up front, because you run line games, you move, you play off of each other. So I just think getting a few games under our belt, I think you're seeing the fruits of the labor of that defensive line and what they're doing at practice. I could probably cite you a bunch of other examples because guys are playing at a high level. Yeah, I think those guys applied consistent pressure, whether we were rushing 4 or 5 or 6, and even at the end of the game, we rushed 3 and we got pressure. So that was an outstanding job by those guys. And I don't want to lose sight of the run defense either, because they did a great job versus the run as well.
And Mary Kay, it's one thing to do it against Justin Fields making his first start with a game plan that was iffy. Quite another thing to do it against Kirk Cousins with Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and down the line.
Yeah, they did a really good job of making that look like an ordinary offense. And that offense had just beaten the Seahawks 30-17. They came really close to beating the Cardinals. This was a team that could have been 3-0. They were averaging 29 points a game. Kirk Cousins had 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, as you mentioned, Justin Jefferson, great receiver, Thielen, Tyler Conklin is a good tight end. And they made them look pretty bad after that first drive, really bad after that first drive, obviously shutting them out. And that was pretty darn remarkable. So much pressure. You would think that they could have adjusted to it in some way, but the Vikings, they just did not have an answer for it. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't get it together. And I didn't think Kirk Cousins had his best game either. I thought that, he had a couple of drop passes and he really wasn't himself either after that opening drive. But I do think the defense had a lot to do with that.
Well, one of the things that you asked Kevin Stefanski about yesterday was Malik Jackson, about that defensive line group and how much fun they appear to be having. Here's Malik Jackson on that group from yesterday.
Yeah, Coach Kiff and Coach JG really do a good job of just allowing us just to be us. I think it's one of those things we've really, through the short time, been able just to understand who each other is and who we are, when we say things and how we say things and what we mean, because we're all from different areas. And I think it's just we're just a great mixture. You got to thank AB for really getting a group of guys together that can gel and really understand what's important and how to be a team. So it's just a good group of guys, and we're just having a good time. We understand that it's competition. We all want to play, but like you said, Coach Kiss lets us understand that we're all going to play. We just have to make sure we're just doing it for the team, and it's worked out well right now.
And Mary Kay, it all starts with that line. All across the line, ends, tackles, everybody has been getting after the quarterback and stopping the run.
Absolutely. It's a really fun defensive line to watch. I feel like I've kind of adopted that position since training camp. I spend a lot of time watching them. I watch their tendencies. I watch how they're building relationships and getting along with each other. And there's great chemistry. They're so incredibly well coached by Chris Kiffin, who is a very inspirational coach, very detailed. They do all these little games on, practice days that we get to watch them do all kinds of little competitions and things. And somehow Chris Kiffin makes it fun, and he's helped bring those guys together, and it's translating over to the field.
Yeah, and the Maliks in the middle have been a nightmare to block, and that just helps Clowney and McKinley and of course Myles Garrett on the edge. All right, Pro Football Focus, analytics-driven website, has graded the rookies through 4 weeks. And let's take a look. The highest graded rookie in the NFL, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, grading out at almost a 90. Creed Humphrey, center for the Chiefs, 84.7. Rashawn Slater, a tackle, who the Browns will face from the Chargers, 77.9. Also in the top 15, Greg Newsome at 70.1. So the Browns, 2 rookies, the first round and second round pick, grading out in the top 15. And Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, again, just brings an element that we haven't seen on that Browns defense in a long time to that linebacker spot.
Yeah, and you know what? And he is just scratching the surface. He is just getting going. heading into this past game, he only had 66 snaps. Joe Woods wanted to bring him along slowly. He did not want to overwhelm him and put too much on his plate. But each week, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah proves that he can handle more. And as they go along here over the next few weeks, I think you're going to start to see it translate into takeaways, maybe some strip sacks. I think you're going to see an interception or two coming down the pike pretty soon. I think that, he can challenge for NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. I really think he can do it. He's got a lot more to him than what he's been able to show because of his limited start. And he also missed a bunch of training camps. So he's a little bit in catch-up mode. And when Anthony Walker gets back, the veteran who also calls the defensive signals, when he gets back into the lineup from his injury, I think that JOK is really going to pop and just really, really come alive and reach his potential.
And that's one thing we haven't really talked or focused about. Browns have been missing a couple of guys that are starters in Walker, who's been on the injured list and with that hamstring issue. The other thing that's been impressive, everybody who steps in has done well. So again, Pro Football Focus with the team of the week, and the Brown that makes the team of the week is the guy they brought in to replace the injured Greg Newsome, Greedy Williams. And I know, just in the way you've talked about Greedy, you're happy for him because of what he went through and how hard he worked to get back out there. Gets his first interception, career interception on Kirk Cousins, and played really well.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we just taped a podcast that will be hitting, I think, tomorrow, and we did the Porter Poll Awards. And spoiler alert, one of those was best moment of the season so far. And I chose the Greedy Williams interception, not just because it was the biggest defensive play of the game in a pretty big victory on the road there in Minnesota, but because of just the whole emotional aspect of it. Because he worked so hard to come back from the shoulder injury, only to lose his starting job to Greg Newsome, who he helped mentor and make sure that Greg was ready to go. And then everyone thought that Greedy Williams might struggle against this very high-powered offense and Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Instead, he goes out there and he makes the play of the game, and it was quite an interception. I mean, that was really an amazing play by him. It was very, very close. I mean, you had to look real quick to see that the ball was in his hands, and it was really cool.
Yeah, and good for Greedy Williams kind of fighting through and persevering and coming up with the big moment against the Vikings. Mary Kay Cabot and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, some areas where the Browns defense can get even better. Guys still getting used to their roles, being asked to do different things. We'll talk about that. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. One of the big free agent signings for the Browns, John Johnson, has played pretty well, but Johnson admits he's kind of getting his legs under and getting more comfortable with what the Browns are asking him to do in this defense.
Yeah, I think the first few games I had to get my feet underneath me. It's just like a new role, a new position. I'm used to like playing all over the place. Now I'm like solely deep, solely in the post. But I'm definitely getting a lot more comfortable. You could just, just my feet are more calm. I'm just, seeing things a lot faster. So I think, it just comes with reps and stuff like that. Most of the time, those grades don't really, like you said, don't really match up to what's actually going on. So, I'm just want to go out there and winning is the most important thing to me. So having great team performances on defense and winning is the biggest thing.
And Mary Kay, when you think of a veteran like John Johnson, you're like, he's playing safety. Browns are asking him to do things that he didn't necessarily do all the time with the Rams, and he give him a couple weeks, and he's starting to look like what you expected in the back end of that defense.
Yeah, as he mentioned, he's playing deep a lot more than he did. He used to play all over the place with the Rams. And so this is a little bit different for him, and he had to sort of figure it out. And now that they've got, they've got Grant Delpit back, and, now, and Ronnie doesn't have a concussion, Ronnie Harrison, they'll be able to probably do some different things, and maybe he'll be able to mix it up a little bit more. But he's starting to come around, and I think you'll see a much more dominant JJ3 in the weeks to come.
So what did you think of the way that Denzel Ward played against the Vikings?
You know what? I thought that Denzel Ward really popped. He showed up that game, and, I looked up a bunch of different times, and there he was making a play. And it was really good to see, because he got off to a slow start. I mean, he was the second lowest rated Browns defender heading into that game. His scores on PFF were not good, his rankings. And, they were kind of targeting him a little bit, and he just wasn't himself. I think it was a function of missing a lot of time in training camp with the hamstring injury. He was still working through his preseason in the first couple of games. I think now he's back, and it really bodes well for the Browns secondary that Denzel is himself again.
Well, and if you shut down Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, you better credit Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams, the two corners. I know they mix up the safeties and everybody has a function of it, but when you hold that kind of offense to 7 points, your cornerbacks are doing a nice job.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, not just those two guys, but Kirk Cousins, to really tame him. And of course, the pressure had a whole lot to do with it. It was the rush and the coverage working in concert, which is such a big hallmark of this defense. But they did a really nice job. I was a little concerned about Denzel Ward in the first few games. I mean, he was giving up some plays, and he just didn't look right. And I think everybody feels a whole lot better about Denzel right now.
Yeah, and you bring up the point. You tend to forget. Boy, he missed a lot of training camp with the hamstring issue, so that explains some things. The defense played really well against a rookie, then a veteran quarterback. Is this on its way to becoming a dominant type of defense, do you think?
Absolutely, 100%, yes. As I mentioned before, they haven't even scratched the surface yet. These first 4 games, you can call it their preseason for the defense. I watched every single practice of training camp, and they never practiced together. So many guys were injured or resting or whatever the case may be. They were never out there together. They never had an opportunity to get in sync and figure out who was doing what and when. And now they're pretty much all back. They're all healthy. Greg Newsome should be coming back again pretty soon. But I think that they're only going to get better. And by November and December, this is just going to be a defense that Cleveland Browns fans can be really, really proud of.
Yeah, it's been a while since Browns fans have had a defense that they can get behind, and you know how the town gets with that. All right, Malik Jackson, one of the Maliks, talked about this front four kind of creating havoc for an offense.
I think it helps the whole defense out when you got the front four that can really, because it's 4-on-5 alignment. So once we can really kind of get that going and get that pressure and, keep that quarterback in the pocket, that's the big thing, especially with these young and these athletic quarterbacks out here. So once they figure we can keep in the pocket, I know it allows the extra guy to really back off and be in coverage and, cover those holes and just help everybody, But the way these cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers are playing on these man coverages, it's awesome to watch. It's just pass rush and coverage go together, and we're playing pretty well right now.
And Mary Kay, when you have the two Maliks getting it done, think about the athleticism you have on the side. It's a long day for a quarterback and an offensive line if they play the way they have been.
Yeah, and again, they're only going to get better. I mean, think about this. You still have Jadeveon Clowney knocking off a little bit of the rust from coming off a knee injury last year and missing his, I think, last 9 games of the season. And then you've got Tack McKinley, who had suffered a groin injury last season. He wasn't himself at all. And didn't have his best season. I think ended up the year also on injured reserve. And I think that there's just great things to come from every level of the defense, really, because you've got, Malik McDowell's going to grow up a little bit on the defensive line. Then you move back to the linebacking core. Sione Taki's just getting back in there. Anthony Walker's still not in there yet because of his injury. He'll be back soon. Then you get back to the secondary, and now you've got Grant in there. You've got Greedy back now. Greg should be back soon, and the other guy's starting to come around. And once again, I just don't even think that we have seen close to what they're capable of yet.
So let me ask you this. What do you think the key is for that defense to become as dominant as it can be? If there's an area that you say, if this does what we think it will do, they can continue to do what they've done the last 2 weeks?
Easy answer, and that is takeaways. They've got to get more takeaways, and they will. I've never seen a football team practice takeaways as much as this one does. They emphasize it, and then they overemphasize it in practice. They practice it so much, it's not even funny. And just even the first 20 minutes of practice that we're allowed to watch these days, that is so much of what they do. I mean, it is see the ball, get the football. And that's gonna start to show up. They're gonna start to really win the turnover battles. And when you're doing that, you're gonna be winning football games.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll look ahead to the Chargers and the Browns' next 4. We'll also look back at some of the highest graded Browns according to PFF through 4 weeks. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. All right, Pro Football Focus. Highest graded Browns through 4 weeks, and there are some that are pretty darn highly graded. Myles Garrett, almost 90. Right behind him, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Joel Bitonio, and Jack Conklin from the offensive line, and Kareem Hunt. And, boy, Myles Garrett, after that Bears game, kind of turned everything up, turned the heat up on everybody, and the defense really responded the last 2 weeks, Mary Kay.
He's really got to keep it going, though. That's the whole key with Myles Garrett. You need to see a full season of that from Myles. Now, he seems poised for it. He seems fired up for it and ready to do that, because that's what it's going to take. I mean, if you actually want to win an award like NFL Defensive Player of the Year, which he really does, on the way to trying to get them to the Super Bowl, you have to sustain that throughout 16 games. And he is going to take on some more of those double teams and triple teams. And of course, we saw him beat a triple team in that game, which he's going to have to do that too. I mean, he challenged himself to do that. When he said, I think that was a little turning point, when he called his teammates out basically and said, you guys need to step it up when I'm chipped and doubled. It sort of had to light a fire under himself too, because I think he realized, wait a minute, I put something on my teammates when I should have said, I've got to beat the double team. I have to beat the triple team. And he, he's lived up to that now. And I think he will continue to do that. But that's what they need to see from him. Sustained success throughout the season.
Yeah, and I think he knew he was doing that, and I think he knew he was doing it to himself as well. So let's take a look. This is from the NFL on CBS. This is a tweet about Myles Garrett and what he's done. So you see sacks, 6, first in the NFL. Hits, 14, first in the NFL. Tackles for loss, 7, tied for first in the NFL. Pressures, 24, tied for second in the NFL. So the candidacy for the defensive player of the year is going pretty well. But again, you're only a quarter of the way through the season.
Absolutely. And we have to remember this. And you know what? Again, I think he turned a corner, but 4.5 sacks came against a rookie quarterback in Justin Fields, where his coaches didn't do him any favors. They didn't max protect. They didn't roll him out. They didn't have any designed runs for him. They left him as a sitting duck, and they didn't try to chip, double, or do anything like that to Myles Garrett. So some of that total for right now needs to get a tiny bit of an asterisk next to it. Again, I think that Myles is capable, certainly, of a ton of sacks, and I think he's going to get them. But now he needs to continue to show that, because, again, a large chunk of that came where, you have to remember how it happened.
Yep, absolutely. So the next 4 games, pretty tough ones for the Browns. They'll be at the Chargers. They'll play the Cardinals, Broncos, and Steelers. So this set of 4 games is a challenge without question.
It really is. I mean, you're playing some good teams, some good quarterbacks coming up. I think that, the quarterbacks that they're going to play, they're going to have to contend with this red hot defense that, again, is just going to continue to get better. So even some of these quarterbacks have looked really, really good so far. They probably haven't run up against any kind of a defense for the most part that they are going to see when they face the Cleveland Browns. And, I know that Browns fans love being able to say that, because how many times have, you talked about going up against the Steelers defense and going up against the Ravens defense? Well, now it's like that when you go up against the Cleveland Browns. And that's how it should be in Cleveland Browns football. So these teams are going to have a tall order. Justin Herbert, second-year quarterback, playing great. But will he play that great against the Cleveland Browns? We'll see. Kyler Murray, will they have an answer for him? Again, like you said, a lot of really good teams coming up and a pretty big challenge.
Yeah, and Kyler Murray now the odds-on favorite to be NFL MVP at this point, which I think they're getting a little ahead of themselves. He's had a great first 4 games, but that's what Vegas has done, and Vegas doesn't get all those flashy lights by being wrong all the time. All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit. What do you see as some challenges with the Chargers? So the Los Angeles Chargers, still kind of hard to say that, but challenges as the Browns get ready to face the Chargers in Week 5.
Well, once again, I think first and foremost, it's the quarterback. And these are the types of situations where I remember when I talked to Kurt Warner once about, Baker and what he was going to have to do to step up into that sort of elite category. And basically Kurt Warner said, one of the things that you have to do is you have to go head to head against another really good quarterback and win the football game. So this will be a nice challenge. It'll be Baker Mayfield up against one of the new up and coming young quarterbacks, one who broke Baker's rookie touchdown record last year. And so, that'll be, the challenge is to try to beat him. And then on the other side of the ball, as I mentioned, last year, the Browns, they just didn't face the Joey Bosa's of the world. They didn't really see that many really good pass rushers. They escaped a lot of that, and it didn't battle test them the way that they need to be battle tested to be able to get through, the playoffs and into the Super Bowl. So I think it'll be good for them. Some of the tests that they'll have coming up, Joey Bosa this week, and then Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt the next week, and then Von Miller the week after that. So these are some of the things coming down the pike, and the Browns have to be on point.
And when you look at the Chargers, one thing that jumps out about that defense, teams are running on them. They're one of the bottom ends as far as defending the run. So that plays into what the Browns have done really well.
Absolutely. And you know what? It doesn't matter if you have a good run defense or a bad run defense. The Browns are going to run the football on you. When you've got Nick Chubb and you have Kareem Hunt, who is just lights out this year, they're going to be able to get those yards on you and those tough yards, especially in the fourth quarter. They are wearing teams down, and it's really, really so incredibly hard to defend the Cleveland Browns run game.
The other thing is it's a different challenge with the Chargers wide receivers. They're big guys, a 6'4", you got Mike Williams, 6'4", and Keenan Allen, 6'2". So those are some uniquely big targets that Justin Herbert has.
Yeah, and you know what? It's about technique when you're playing guys like that. That's what those guys have to do. They're gonna have to be on point with their technique, because some of the Browns defenders are not that tall, but you just have to play big. You have to play tall, and they will. They're used to playing guys like that. They've done it so many times before. I don't think the size will be that big of an issue with the way some of them are playing right now.
As you see it, some of the keys. What are if the Browns are going to do what they want to do, and cross country, it's never easy to go out west and come back with a win. What do the Browns need to do to ensure they get to 5-1? Or 4-1. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself.
You know what? I really think just keep applying the pressure, keep blitzing, keep applying as much pressure as you can to get a quarterback off of his mark and off of his football game. And that's what they're going to have to do with this really good young quarterback. So that's going to be definitely a key there. Then they're going to have to block up Joey Bosa. They don't know yet who their left tackle is going to be, but they're going to have to block. They're going to have to really block really well to make sure that Baker doesn't get sacked a bunch of times and that he can run his own game. And then, as you said, run the heck out of the ball. Just cram it down their throats, and it should be a formula for success.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Mary Kay, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you read her in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We're going to continue talking Browns football. We will be joined by Tim Bielik, reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns football. So Emmanuel Acho on if Baker Mayfield is costing himself a big payday with the upcoming contract that he is likely to sign with the Browns. This is from FS1 Speak for Yourself.
He's not, fellas. He's not. Let me tell you all the ways to acquire wealth in the NFL. How do I know so? Because I never had to do it. So I wasn't so far in the forest that I couldn't see the trees. I was on the outside looking at all the trees, looking at the animals, looking at the roots. The ways to acquire wealth in the NFL are two options. First and foremost, individually, you go out there and ball. Even if your team don't ball, if you ball, you're going to get paid. Look at guys like Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, he balled. Team was 4-12. Obviously, he got paid before the season, but he was going to get paid regardless because he's a baller. Second way, Bucky Brooks, to get paid, your team can ball. Look no further than Joe Flacco. He became the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. $120 million over 6 years. That was a lifetime of that contract. Not because he balled. Joe Flacco had 22 touchdowns, 10 interceptions a year he got paid. Joe Flacco had a 59% completion percentage a year he got paid. But the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl. If you all are not too old to remember or too old to forget, they didn't win that Super Bowl in part because of Flacco. Now, he balled during the course of that playoffs. He was in his bag. But Ray Lewis and all the hype and all the drama and the defense standing up, power outage, etc. So nonetheless, you got two ways to get paid in the NFL. You can ball or your team can ball. Baker Mayfield is the furthest thing from balling right now.
Let's welcome in Tim Bielik, reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Tim, to his point, I don't think the Browns expect him to go out and put up a huge number. We've talked on this show before. He's going to be more like a Troy Aikman guy. His job is to get the ball into the hands of the playmakers they surround him with and orchestrate wins. Browns are 3-1. You know, can only be one game better than that, and there's only one team that's unbeaten in the NFL right now.
Exactly. I mean, I know Mayfield hasn't particularly played well, especially Sunday. I kind of contribute the Vikings game to just an anomaly, just, the fluky day like in basketball, when you're a guy who's normally a really good shooter, but you go out there and you're 3 for 18 or whatever. Those days happen, and that happened to Baker on Sunday against the Vikings. Now, it hurts him individually, at least right now, because I got my quarterback power rankings that come out on Thursday. I'm going to have Mayfield outside the top 15 for the first time this season. Just, he really hasn't had a good last 2 weeks. He hasn't performed like you would expect, but still a lot of time for him to really get back to where he should be. But, I like it. I agree with Emmanuel's point about how, he's got to be good or his team is good. Right now, his team is good. And with 13 games left in the season, there's still plenty of time for him to kind of right the ship, kind of figure out what's going on, adjust, and, get back to the form he was a year ago, especially down in the second half of the season. And the other way, I mean, you get paid is if you play well in big games. We've talked before about how well he played in the playoffs. He does that again, he's going to get the payday I think he probably wants.
Yeah, and again, there's you don't pay for a quarterback in September, you pay for him in December. So plenty of time, but it's hard to argue. Baker Mayfield not playing probably the way he wants to play the last 2 games. Let's move on. Pete Prisco, Power Rankings, CBSSports.com. Browns were down at 12 after week 1. Let's take a look at them right now. Browns move into 5th spot. So Prisco says, wasn't pretty in Minnesota, but they found a way to win. That's the sign of a good team. They just keep fighting even on bad days. And I agree wholeheartedly with Pete Prisco. The sign of a good team is when you don't play as well as you think you do and you find a way to come away with a W. That's going to happen 3-4 times during the course of a season. And if you end up with wins, you end up being a playoff team.
Of course. I mean, football is a team game. We talk about quarterbacks a lot, and rightfully so because they have the most impact in the game. But at its core, over the course of a 17-game season, you're going to have weird fluky games. You're going to have games where the quarterback isn't going, or the running game isn't going, or the defense can't stop anybody. And if you continue to win those games anyway, then that's a sign that you have a pretty complete team. And the Browns are a pretty complete team, as complete as there is right now in the NFL, right up there with teams like the Buccaneers and the Bills as far as, completeness up and down the roster. Now, there's going to be games. I still expect games where Mayfield is going to win games, even though you don't necessarily need him to. There's going to be games where Nick Chubb goes for big yardage. I know he had 100 against the Vikings on Sunday. There's going to be games where he goes crazy. And then there's going to be, I would imagine, more games where the defense does what it did against Minnesota. That's a pretty good offense they went up against, a team that should have been better than 1-2. If they make that 30-some yard field goal against Arizona, you're talking about a 500 football team in Minnesota. You're talking about a 2-1 team in Minnesota going into that game. And then that makes things completely different when you look at who you play against. But I mean, winning on the road is never easy, and the Browns found a way to do it. So especially on a day when the offense is going, that tells you this team's got some ability to overcome some mistakes. And for the rare time since coming back, they have a margin of error to work with.
All right, so as you look at the Browns after 4 games, 3-1, again, nobody in the AFC is better than 3-1. Only the Cardinals, who they'll face in a couple weeks, are the lone unbeaten team. What are the areas of this football team, the Browns, that concern you after 4 weeks?
I think number one to me is pass blocking, and we know the offensive line is good. I know Mary Kay was talking about how, in this next stretch of games, you're going to have to go up against really good pass rushers, and it's kind of baptism by fire, I guess. You're right in the middle of the stretch where they had to deal with Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn in week 3, Danielle Hunter in week 4. This week he got Joey Bosa. It goes on and on and on. But I mean, the bottom line is Baker Mayfield's been sacked 12 times. I think it's the 3rd most in the league. I believe only Derek Carr and Zach Wilson have been sacked more than Mayfield, and that's too many. That's too many times, of course. And we know about what's going on at left tackle with Jedrick Wills. I've said before that Browns should probably shut him down, even maybe regardless of the options you have. I get that Blake Hance and James Hudson are, they haven't played well, but I think it's got to be immaterial, those things. You can't worry about shutting a guy down, avoiding shutting him down because you don't have anybody better. You got to worry about the long-term implications, because we've seen Wills leave the last 3 games in the second half, because of that ankle. He had to get the MRI on Monday. There's still questions about his health, and you're going to need him more in November and December. So if you have to shut him down for a couple weeks, even against some great pass rushers, that may just be a result you have to kind of live with if it means getting your left tackle right and getting the play you expect out of him when it matters the most.
Yeah, and that could be exactly what happens. We'll find out more about that tomorrow when the Browns announce what the MRI looked like for Jedrick Wills. So Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will talk more about Baker Mayfield. We'll also take a look at the Chargers and some areas of concern. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns football with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Colin Cowherd from the Colin Cowherd podcast talked about Baker Mayfield and his performance against the Vikings.
I also want to touch on the Cleveland Browns win over the Minnesota Vikings. And a lot of people on social media, Colin, you got to bury Baker Mayfield. He was terrible. Yes, he was. But the two things to remember, for the Cleveland Brown organization, to go on the road, beat a pretty talented team, Minnesota, in a tough place to play, when your quarterback is god-awful, that is a stepping stone for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, my takeaway was, yeah, that's what good teams do. Their quarterback stinks, they play poorly, and they beat a pretty talented team on the road. That's a great stepping stone. Listen, I'm not going to beat up on Baker Mayfield for having a bad game. Everybody has a bad game. Aaron Rodgers, week 1. Josh Allen, week 1. Tom Brady, 4 of them last year. I've never put Baker Mayfield in the top 10 class. So I'm not holding him to this great 16-week, one bad week performance. He was awful. He was skittish. He's starting to sail things now. He was high on a lot of his throws. And I've said this before. He and OBJ, it just, he and Jarvis Landry work. He and OBJ don't. I can't figure it out. It just doesn't work.
Let's bring Tim Bielik back in. And Tim, I don't often agree with Colin Cowherd, but I get his point there. The other thing is Baker Mayfield's going to need to win some games for the Browns this year. There's going to come a game where he has to, and there's going to be multiple games. I still think he's going to be able to throw for 300 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns when he needs to. The one thing he didn't do against the Vikings, he did not turn the ball over. That's when you get into problems. That's when you are a detriment to your team as opposed to just not helping them. Baker Mayfield didn't help the offense. He didn't hurt it either.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I look at that game, that was kind of the one thing that kind of keeps it from being an F grade in my mind is that he does not turn the football over. It might have been it was probably one of his worst games, if not the worst game he's had with the Browns when it comes to quarterback rating and completion percentage. But again, the point, he did not turn the football over. And this is a 14-7 game. So obviously turnover margin was significant. And the thing we're forgetting with Baker is, if he hits that pass to Odell Beckham Jr. for a 62-yard touchdown in the final minute 13 of that game, we're talking about something completely different, in this whole thing. We're talking about, Baker, he had a bad game, but on his last throw, man, he hit a dart to put the game away, to put the dagger in an opponent, and he and Odell looked good again. That didn't happen. And I think that was just a microcosm of kind of what I thought about it. I think he was just off. Colin said it best. It happens to guys. You're not going to play amazing for 17 games. These guys are human. They're going to have a game once in a while where they're just off for whatever reason. It could be just any little thing where you just miss guys for whatever reason. It doesn't even have to be physical. Everything could be right. You could just be missing a little bit. And that's kind of all I think Sunday was. And I mean, if he goes out and doesn't play well against the Chargers and the Cardinals, then I think he could start to worry a little bit. But I just look at it as a pure anomaly.
How concerned are you about Odell and Baker? I thought last week could have been a big week for the two of them. It wasn't, obviously. How concerned are you with that? And I don't even know if it's chemistry. They just don't seem to be able to connect.
I'm not as concerned maybe as some people. I mean, I look at what happened in week 4 as, they didn't connect, but, Baker really didn't connect with anybody in the game. I mean, it gets highlighted when you have a history of guys like Baker and Odell just never really clicking that often. It gets magnified more when the quarterback doesn't play well, as it happened on Sunday. But we also look at week 3 against Chicago. Baker and Beckham looked pretty decently connected on some of those plays, including a nice deep back shoulder throw to Beckham in I believe it was the second half of that game. Yep. So again, I think it just comes down to just that kind of game for Baker. Getting Jarvis Landry back in a couple weeks, I think will help when he's got, all this open field to go to. Then he's not as focused on Odell, because when you look at who he's got to throw to, his number 2 receiver with Odell is Rashard Higgins. If Landry comes back, that's number 2, and then that moves everybody else down. Then you have more experienced guys with Baker, guys he knows better, and I think that can make him better. But right now, maybe there is some rust to work out with Beckham, and that combined with just, Baker just misfiring as he did on Sunday in one of the biggest ways we've seen him do as a Brown. I think that seems like the more proper story of what's going on. The Odell-Baker thing is always going to kind of be there until Odell goes off, unless Odell goes and gets like 150 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game, which with the Browns and the way this offense is set up, that may just never happen because of the balance on this offense.
All right, before I let you go, when you look at the Chargers game, how do you see this playing out, and what are some of the keys?
Well, obviously Justin Herbert's the standout. I mean, he's playing very well. Had 3 touchdowns on Monday night against the Raiders. The guy that I think everybody's still kind of surprised, that he's panned out as well as he has. But there's star power all over the Chargers as well. I mean, you got Austin Eckler running back. You got Keenan Allen at receiver. Mike Williams at receiver. Seems like he's playing well. Then on defense, you got Nick Bosa. You've got Derwin James, who when healthy is as good as there is. At safety, you got a rookie corner, Asante Samuel Jr. He seems like he's playing well. And they also have a guy in Brandon Staley, who we saw last year with the Rams, put together some very good defenses. And Los Angeles seems like they're one of the better scoring defenses in football right now. So I look at this game, this seems like it has the makings on paper for a classic shootout. I mean, we all thought that last week. It didn't necessarily happen. I still don't think we get a shootout this week. I think both teams will be in the 20s because the offenses are that talented. The defense is going to make some plays. I think it comes down to the final few minutes. I haven't quite decided who I think is going to win, but it's going to be one where I don't think the winning team, whoever wins by more than 4 points. I just think it's going to be tight all the way throughout.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's going to be a tight game as well. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. As always, Tim, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Tim Bielik. Make sure you read him in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. That'll do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We'll see you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com and the D-Man, Dennis Maniloff. That's tomorrow at 4. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow on Sports4CLE.